Good afternoon to all of our members of our universal philosophical community, the White Tower. Today's topic is direct democracy and democratic issues. Some introductory remarks are stated, explained, and analyzed by contemporary philosophers and also philosophers of the recent past, namely Chomsky, Rousseau, and Mill. Now, to start with, Noam Chomsky states that democracy is a value in itself. In other words, you don't have to defend democracy or freedom, as it's part of the innate human nature. It's natural to feel free to participate and not being oppressed or suppressed. If this is not natural, then the conclusion is that the public is subject to the control of private wealth. And we'll start reflecting that human greed is a powerful weapon. Of course, a global society having these principles in mind is heading towards the path of great destruction, according to Noam Chomsky, who nowadays thinks that democracy is basically linked with the process of ratification of proposed laws by the government when the public, for instance, has to choose in between two positions, depending on which position somebody wants, for instance, a left-wing party or a right-wing party. But how meaningful is this? He wonders. A meaningful democracy is an active participation in the creation of decisions. And this has implications of direct democracy. So this is a method of getting the people into the participating and decision-making process. Because the state cannot silence the public. So it seems as if the whole process, democratic process of electing delegates, for instance, or participating in the actual democratic procedure is seen as a problem to be overcome on behalf of the rulers. But what happens if people throw themselves in the public arena? He then answers in one word: crisis. The governments have to make sure that decision-making power lies in the hands of the so-called specialized class or smart guys, by keeping the general population out, by actually marginalizing voters, by making them indifferent, obedient. They allow people to participate, but as consumers, chatterers, and not as actual participants. Now, there is a book written by Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman called Manufacturing Consent and the Political Economy of the Mass Media. Everything is analyzed there. And now, in a nutshell, people in power make them as indifferent, as I've said, and there is an attempt to offer some sort of governmental legitimacy that is legitimating ratification and decisions taken by others other than the public and the people themselves. As they do allow people to react in the public arena as much as they desire, no matter how they do it and what the consequences are sometimes, insofar as they don't get together, the people themselves, in any possible way, with an aim to influence the predetermined decision-making process. Now, that's the point. Now, the specialized class tries to eliminate all these methods by which voters can educate themselves and organize themselves, can very well take actions that could potentially have an effect on the voting process itself. Now, that's why Chomsky advises us to learn some lessons from the doctrines of the Enlightenment. That is, the individuals shall not be subject to the regime of oppression established by many institutions like the church, the military regime, the state, or the feudal system. He clearly states that corporations are the new form of power nowadays. They hold an immense part of decisions and economy. They are part of our political system. They can control what is produced, distributed, or invested. And of course, there's a huge disadvantage here that the gains are narrowly concentrated. So how do voters have to think? He states that the public mind does count, the public opinion does count, so long as it is well argumented, examines the situation through a critical eye and an interdisciplinary way. So that voters shall not rent themselves to owners and institutions of the country, but they shall play by their own rules, making sure that there are rules and regulations over the voting process, and they learn to function for the people, for the majority and society as a whole, as the interests at stake are not a problem of the few, but a problem of the entire community. Now, moving on to Rousseau, Rousseau clearly states that human beings are by nature good, but there are times that can be corrupted by the influence of society. He praises human nature, basically, and denounces the evils of modern civilization, all these inequalities and divisions of modern life. He focuses on how to live more free and autonomous lives. When Rousseau was young, he entered an essay competition called Whether the Development of the Arts and Sciences actually improves public morality. He was the only one to answer negatively by saying that both the arts and sciences actually corrupt people and downgrade morality, and that's the reason why he prefers Sparta to Athens, due to the fact that the culture and arts of Athens used to corrupt the whole society. So he kind of thinks that the advancement in sciences and technology, let's say, in a broader sense, is a false sense of need for luxury. That is, sciences and technology and the whole advancement that is made in these fields does not make us better people. So he clearly criticizes corruption of modern society. And what does he offer as an alternative solution? He offers the notion of agrarianism, let's say, as a political movement that could bring about land reforms and improve economic status of farmers. In a sense, we shall not forget that he used to live in a village in Geneva. So we shall imagine some sort of agricultural society, and that's where his utopian vision of a small-scale republicanism was born, leading him to turn his attention to the search for a harmonious life, which is inherent in human nature. A simple life, a unique life, a solitary, and also a social life, putting emphasis on the socialization of human beings. But he wonders, is it enough to speak about the socialization of people and things, about free will and creative action, without a direction towards the free community of free individuals? Now, that's a big question back at his time, and he has an answer to that. He thinks that he distinguishes between two states, the natural state of beings and that of a political society as it is presented nowadays. Of course, he thinks that one shall put forward the natural state as a necessary condition, so as to think about the second, the political society. In other words, somebody has to understand what is innate and what is artificial in the present nature of man, to assess the present situation as humans. He thinks that the political society nowadays does not correspond to the free natural state of man. But how could we as human beings understand this natural state? And that is also a big question. And he has an answer to this as well. He clearly says that people have to understand that the notion of the natural state, not on the basis of the impressions, on the ideas and representation of ideas of the modern political society provides us with, but as a kind of hypothetical conception on the basis of which the true history of the human world can be constructed. Now, somebody might ask, what is this hypothetical conception on the basis of which the true human world can be built upon? By this hypothetical conception, he actually challenges the dogma that today's bourgeois society, capitalist society in other words, has been sent to us by God, and as such is non-negotiable. Now, if we challenge this dogmatic statement and have this new conception, this could cancel the artificial collectivity of the capitalist society, which what it does is that it gives the economically powerful power over the powerless. This conception depicts man as free from his chains, which are and represent the terrible passions of civilization. So simple as that. And what does this hypothetical conception demonstrate, in fact, is that all inequalities begin with the establishment of our social relationship on the basis of private property. In other words, everything starts when the first man fenced off a field and said, "This is mine." Now, this is the beginning of the private property and ownership. So the consequences since then, within the framework of bourgeois capitalist, let's say, political society, have been devastating for humankind. There have been a lot of wars, murders, miseries, crimes, which all of them contradict the nature of the natural state of people. And that's really sad. And what does Rousseau ultimately propose is that because he actually realizes that today's man travels together with his fellow men the journey of progress and civilization, which is actually a journey with no return. What we actually need is a unanimous agreement. In other words, a social contract. And what does this social contract symbolize? Actually, two things. It symbolizes, first, the person and his goods are protected within a community, while at the same time, each member obeys only to himself and fully enjoys his individual freedom. So in other words, the social contract is, on the one hand, the act contract of uniting people into a community, and on the other hand, the act contract of free existence of individuals within this community. So a contract between two contracting parties with the same rights and obligations, without any hegemony and charismatic exceptions. And by that, what does Rousseau want to prevent? He wants to prevent the illusions of mass democracy and left-wing rhetoric. In essence, the rhetoric of such left-wing logic is a new eschatology, leading to the construction of new Führers who appear as saviors, but they act as conservatives, marginalizing the unit and corrupting the group as a whole. Last but not least, the philosopher Mill is an advocate of citizens' rights to participate in politics so as to defend their interests in public debates. Citizens have the ability and the education to stand up for them. He believes in the philosophy of utilitarianism, which states that one should act in such a way to produce the greatest aggregate happiness for the greatest number of people. That actions are right as they tend to promote happiness, and wrong if they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. Now, his views on liberty state that people are actually caught between a rock and a hard place, as if they are influenced by both the tyranny of their ruler, on the one hand, and that of the majority, on the other hand, with a stifling conformism in thought, character, and action. As far as his harm principle idea is concerned, it's not based on any natural law, but simply promotes individuals' growth and society's utility. And in what way? He gives an example. He says that if rebellion is really necessary, people should rebel. However, there is a proper way to do it. The way to express these arguments of rebellion should be either through a public speech or through writing, but not in a way that causes actual harm to others. Such is the harm principle, that the only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others. And that's his crucial point. Now, what are the conditions under which individuals can flourish and be happy? He names a few: freedom of action, thought, discussion, freedom of press, freedom of character. People shall be critical thinkers, open to difference and reasoning through moral issues, that whatever they think of, they shall be guided through reason under the overarching principle of ethics and morality. Regarding his views on which government best serves people's interests, Mill supports people's participation in politics, as people gain a lot in the moral and political field. Participation in politics means that people can develop moral training and sympathy for others, and also a feeling of society's viewpoint. Now, he's a bit skeptical about direct democracy, as he sees it a bit impractical due to the uneducated masses. So he proposes representative democracy, but not exactly in the today's sense of voters' delegates. Instead, he sees delegates as being more responsible, as those who shall have the duty to make up their own mind about what's the common good. They shall be as educated as possible, and they shall make wise decisions in Parliament, of course, extending the franchise to those previously excluded. That's his basic viewpoint. And these are our sources on direct democracy and democratic issues on Chomsky, Rousseau, and Mill. Waiting for your comments. Thank you very much for listening. On behalf of our universal philosophical community, the White Tower. See you next time.